Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am a diagnosed narcissist, but with that being said, keep in mind that I am not a licensed professional. I only speak from my own experiences. So, with that out of the way, I'll just get started. So, I was right here thinking about my relationships with other people, which, as a narcissist, I would say is something that you actually spend a continuous amount of time doing, even if, let's say, as a covert narcissist such as myself. I have an avoidant attachment style. I mean, I think a lot of narcissists just do in general, whether you're covert or overt. But the thing that's strange is despite having to, compensate and elevate and think to myself that I am better than everybody, I don't need anybody, blah, 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 whatever, that kind of stuff. I've said in lots of videos, I believe, and it's still true now, that all of my thinking is always external to how other people perceive me. So even this idea that, oh yeah, I don't care what anybody thinks of me, nobody can influence how I feel, whatever, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. I don't have that genuinely because inside, if I don't feel shame, I just feel absolute nothingness. Like I don't exist, or like I'm pretty much just dead. I wouldn't expect anybody that isn't a cluster B to get it. It is a very difficult kind of experience for other people to understand, which is why it's classified as a mental illness to begin with. Like, what do you mean you're not you, bro? What do you mean you don't exist, or what do you mean you don't have a sense of self? Blah blah blah, or like whatever. I mean, yes, that will always be a key component to it, but I guess I should more so focus on maybe the shame aspect. And I guess that's why I see everything so negatively. I see myself negatively. I see the world negatively. Everything just sucks. And I'm sure a lot of it has to do with my earliest experiences of seeing just how unfair everything is right from the get go, and just how, power runs everything in this stupid, selfish world of hypocrites and people with their agendas, or whatever. So yeah, the reason why I wanted to make this video in particular is because there's one kind of person that I've never really gotten along with. It's people with very high, like people pleasing tendencies. I tend to clash with people like that because I'm not afraid to be confrontational. Or when I say confrontational, I just mean argumentative. Like when people say something, I expect them to, back up whatever they say. Or, I can easily go in conversations with a lot of people where, let's just say, a debate might ensue or an argument might ensue because I mean, I'll just say I tend to think very like philosophically, and I have an existential crisis every single second, which I'm sure a lot of it is also attributed to like my lack of like identity, or like my lack of self and whatnot. But if there's one thing that I've always hated in my life, it's disingenuous harmony, which is kind of the ironic thing here, because I realize that because I have a lot of like negative experiences, especially since as far as I can remember, like just seeing the hierarchy and everything, honestly, like if you're like a narcissist, or I mean, let's just say like if you're like a cluster B person, like in general, it's not easy to get rid of the hierarchical thinking that like you're imprinted on, and you just see it everywhere because we were brought into the world, so aware from the get-go of like all this unfairness, all this, like unequal power dynamics that just, run everything, and people are just, selfish and out for themselves, whatever, this or that. And we've had to, be the same way just in order to, I guess, just, you know, I just exist in this like dog eat dog world. Because if you're a cluster B person, I think one thing you understand like very well is that it's eat or be eaten, I guess, and it's only one or the other. So when I see people that just have these like, people pleasing like tendencies, I see them as such like hypocrites. I see them as such, like posers, and like people that are fake or whatever. Because okay, when I say somebody that's a people pleaser, I'm saying, somebody that needs to be liked by other people, somebody that needs to like, establish the harmony, or like they try to be some sort of like wannabe Jesus or like whatever. It's just so disingenuous because it's funny how these people's, like from the way I see it, these people's identity only exists within having, let's say, somebody like me to, blame. Because if there was nobody causing problems, how would they even jump in with their messiah complex, with their like savior complex, or like whatever, in terms of like, oh, you're ruining the vibe. Oh, you're such a pessimist. You're so like whatever. I mean, like, give me a fucking break. uh, I think like every single time I experience or I encounter this kind of person, it just, I don't know, it just like drives me off the wall, which I'm sure that's also how they feel. Which is kind of like ironic because, you know, I've made a video, for example, about like why borderlines and narcissists are attracted to each other. You can go check that out. I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult to find. So I actually do like people like this, but I feel like that's why I think that, okay, this is why the world is like hypocritical, like by nature, because these people don't even realize it, that they're actually being selective as much as like I am. Because for example, like just from like a quick sort of like get go, the reason why narcissists are attracted to borderlines is because borderlines tend to have very high people pleasing tendencies. And if you're a narcissist receiving that treatment, of course you don't have an issue with it. But the thing that's like really, really like hypocritical about like people like this, and I guess ultimately you could also say why narcissists and borderlines like split on each other like often, because it's like, oh, everything's about you from like the borderlines like point of view, and like of course as a narcissist you're like inclined to think, well, yeah, it should be. And it's like, you put yourself in that position, so I thought we had like an understanding in terms of like who's on top or like who's at the bottom. But then I guess it still confirms my worldview that like, okay, everybody is still after power to like a certain extent, because even if these borderlines want to act like, oh, um we do everything for like our favorite person, blah blah blah, or like whatever, then why would they split? Like if they were truly comfortable like that, like constantly, like why would they split? I believe they are probably comfortable like that for the most part, constantly, but then they split. Like I'll be honest, I am comfortable feeling really narcissistic and like superior and thinking that I'm better than everybody most of the time, but then I split because I know it's a compensation. I know it's flawed or like whatever, because you can't, I guess from like talking from my own experience, you can't actually stay, and from what I've seen in like other people, you can't actually stay in one mode of being constantly. And I think this is the trap that like cluster B individuals such as myself fall into. We want to exist in a particular state constantly. Like for me as a narcissist, it's comfortable being, superiority and whatnot. For borderline, it's I guess like the constant reassurance that like they're good enough, but then they need more, because eventually they're gonna split. I need more and more superiority because I need to plaster over any feelings of shame, any feelings of like complete like emptiness and nothingness like whatsoever. So it's never enough. Nothing from the looks of it is ever enough if you're like a cluster B individual, because everything just looks fake. Everything just looks extremely hollow and whatnot. I'll try to get back to the point, even though a lot of this I'm probably just comparing and contrasting like borderlines and like narcissists. But like, okay, basically, yes, people with like high, people pleasing tendencies are, what I absolutely, just like hate or like whatever in a way. And I think that's why I always flip. Yeah, I'll say this. Yeah, I'll flip if I'm in a relationship with somebody with borderline tendencies, because I dig it. But those exact qualities are also the reasons that I kind of like hate them for. I should make a separate video on, I guess, like why your narcissist partner like turns on you or like hates you. I mean, I believe I already did though. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I have something more to add to that, then yeah, perhaps I'll make another video about it, because yeah, whatever. But yeah, so when I see people with like these like people pleasing tendencies, like they just look fake. They just look like, they're like full of shit basically, because why do they get to be selective in terms of like, oh, this is peace, and they don't have to call it selfishness? Because if they have somebody like me to attack, or like somebody that's quote unquote like bringing the vibe down, or like, being gloom and doom and is like ruining the mood for everybody with like pessimism or negativity or like this need to argue or like debate or something, then I don't see the difference because they can act that way, but they'll just use like fancier, like nicer words. So like I don't see the difference in terms of like, you know, manipulation and whatnot. Because a lot of people, for example, will shame narcissists because like, oh, you have like such high manipulative like tendencies or like whatever, like, oh, you're always trying to establish like control or something. But yet, when you say these things in criticism to narcissists or wanting us to like change, what are you trying to elicit? Is it not guilt? Is it not like shame, quote unquote? Because it seems like it's very one sided here. And sure, you might say I'm like projecting or like whatever, but like honestly, I see, I don't see other people as any different than myself. Because, oh, if I make you feel terrible because, like, oh, you're always destroying my worldviews, or you're so negative, or you're so this, you're so that, or like whatever, then how are you any different by saying those like exact same things about like me, more or less? Because you can find so much narcissistic content online that's like, oh my gosh, narcissists are just these like draining people, blah blah blah, or like whatever. But I mean, like that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So people would rather have disingenuous harmony, which I can't stand. Which is why when I was younger, yeah, I argued with my parents a lot. I fought with my parents a lot. I, argued and fought with like a lot of people in general, just because there was always this need for control that I couldn't stand. Or I saw it as a game, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna be the winner. Like let's go, let's go. So when I see people and they're just talking about like, oh, like you're ruining the mood, or like you're killing the vibe or some shit, then I'm just like, okay, well you're killing my vibe. So like why do I have to care if you don't care? Because see, this is why I think like it's a facade. It's like some sort of like illusion, because like that's all people need to maintain is like their self confirmation bias. Sure, if you're already surrounded by others that more or less like agree with like what you're saying, sure, you can get this like, false facade that like, oh yeah, we're strong. But okay, despite like the struggles with like NPD and all this kind of stuff, I've actually always liked this about myself, because I never determined, let's say, like truth or accuracy based on the amount of people that like believe in it. Or like basically you could just say that like appeal to majority fallacy essentially, which I've seen like more people, I guess maybe because someone's gonna argue, oh yeah, they're more connected to humanity, and maybe I'm not as much connected to humanity or my own humanity or like whatever. But I have been praised by some people about it before, where they're like, "Oh yeah, you're very strong in your opinions," or like whatever. Or like it could be a group of people going against you, but you know what? You still stand firm on whatever it is that you're saying. Whereas like other people would just like crack and buckle because they need to be subservient little whatever. But yeah, that's actually the one thing that I like about myself. So sure, you can go online, you can find like, oh, the narcissistic like abuse content that like goes out to like already confirm a kind of like belief that like you hold, a kind of like stigma that you already hold towards us. But like, I think in a way there is still something that people with people pleasing tendencies can also like, learn from like narcissists, because like how long until you crack, how long until you break and you realize that, oh, people have just been taking advantage of you, people have just been like stomping on you or like whatever. So I might exist on an extreme perhaps just because I have like narcissistic personality like disorder or like whatever. But I guess making this video, I mean, yeah, I wanted to point out like what I think are hypocrisies, what I think are like, I don't know, like what I think is like super like annoying about these people. But I guess like I still wanted to say that like there is something that you can learn from us in a way, kind of like what I just said, like until you crack, basically. So like, okay, sure, good for you that 9 times out of 10 you might be able to get along with people way better than perhaps like somebody like me would be able to. But like, don't think for a second that I don't see through that, and I don't know that like you have your own problems and your own like uh, delusions that you think are working, but are not. So I guess in a way, I'm still thinking that like, okay, sure, these are just like two sides of the same coin, and I understand why someone like me and someone like you might not like each other like very well, but it's a pros and cons like situation. So I guess like I still felt the need to make this video because like your cope is as shaky as mine. I mean, I'll just be for real. Everybody's cope is super fucking shaky, and we all die, and it's just gonna be a goodbye. So I guess at the end of it, whatever, right?